Good evening. It's question time. And hello, good evening, and welcome. It's question time. It's a new idea for us, and we're hoping to fill that gap that's been created because there are no shows, no demos. Clubs, a lot of clubs aren't meeting, certainly not meeting face to face anymore, and so there's not a lot of opportunity to ask those questions to the experts about turning. So that's what we're doing tonight. We're trying to fill that gap a little bit. We've got 3 expert turners for you answering questions about turning. We've got a nice range of questions lined up, and I'll be introducing you to the turners in just a moment or two. First of all, just a couple of quick things to mention. If you haven't already signed up for our bulletins about our live streams and everything else, do jump over to our website and sign up there, please. You'll get reminders, you'll get information about what's coming up. We've got another 6 months worth of Conkers live lined up, live demos from some great turners coming along. So do make sure you get along for that. And if you like your questions and you like your answers, we have got a weekly newsletter that we send out. And in that, we put 3 questions that we've been asked about finishing. We put the answers in there and just mail it out every Friday. Hopefully, a lot of you saw that this morning. And maybe that's why you're here. I don't know. Anyway, we're looking forward to tonight. So it's a new idea for us. It's a new thing. So if you've got any comments that you want to make, then please let us have them. Keep them polite. If you've got any thoughts about the evening, if you enjoyed it, if you don't enjoy it, if you think it could be a different format, if you want to see more, let us know. But let us know in the chat underneath, in the comments underneath. Don't put it in the chat because we probably won't get to see that. We're going to be way too busy to read the chat. So put it in the comments, please. But don't ask any additional questions in the comments. We're unlikely to be able to answer them. Anyway, let's get this show on the road, as they say. And it's time to introduce you to our demonstrators. First up, we've got Emma Cook, a wonderful turner and carver, known to her fans as the Tiny Turner. No, Tiny Turner. Thank you. Emma combines her passion for carving and turning to produce some amazing work, often combining her pieces with other mediums to create new ideas. Emma gives regular demos on YouTube from her workshop in Yorkshire, and her work can be described as spellbinding. Perhaps now we know why. Emma will be demonstrating for us in Conkers Live at the beginning of February. Next up is Richard Findley, joining us from Leicester, where he runs a successful wood turning business. Richard makes items large and small, from one-offs to production runs. He's also well known to our Conkers Live viewers, having given an amazing demo for us in October. The demo was so packed with information and tips that it overran somewhat, not that anyone minded. Richard also gives demos to clubs on Zoom, and like all of us, hopes to one day be able to return to doing so in person. Completing our panel of experts is another Northerner, David Lowe. Dave is the turner in residence at Snayton Wood Turning Supplies, where he's on hand to give assistance to visitors and also runs hugely popular courses there, when, of course, the store is allowed to open. A regular at the Northern Woodworking Show in Harrogate, Dave has also travelled across Europe with his wood turning. One of his signature pieces is the zipped vase, showing that there are no flies on him. So there you go. They hadn't seen that before. So yeah, I hope you don't mind that, guys. So welcome, Turners. How are you all?
Very good, thank
Hi,
you.
Terry. Yeah,
Fine,
good,
thank you.
Excellent, excellent. Great to have you here this evening. Thank you so much for coming along, giving up your evening, and just chatting to people. Well, we're not going to set the world to rights, really, but we're going to hopefully set the turning world to rights and see what we can do with that. And yeah, let's start off with something just a touch controversial. Carbide cutters, carbide tools. Now, I'm not a turner. I make no secret of the fact, but I know that it's a bit of a hot topic. So fill me in. Go on. Tell me about carbide tools.
Boo.
You going first, Richard?
Oh, deadly silence. Come on. Someone's got an opinion. Who's going to be brave and bring that up?
I'm all for traditional tools. I do own 2 carbides, but I use for hollowing, but I don't have a lot of experience with anything else. I'm a bit of a stickler for traditional chisels, I'm afraid.
Yeah,
Okay.
so there's sort of 2 sorts of carbide. Well, there's carbide and there's carbide. There's the new ones that are sort of known as sort of branded as easy tools, which have got like a flat carbide scraper tip.
Yeah.
And often beginners like them because they're sort of branded as being easy because they are basically scrapers. You can just sort of poke them into the wood, and there's very little danger of catches and things like that. But also, there's not the learning curve with sharpening because the tips they last a long time because they're carbide, but they're basically disposable when you chuck them away. The other type is like a cupped cutter. I've got one there. See if I can show you a bit of a close up. There we go. Got to get these cameras right. So this is a carbide cutter as well, but it's got a cup cutter, so it actually cuts rather than scrapes. And I've got a couple of these, and these, like Emma said, they're very good for kind of small hollow forms, end grain work. So boxes, goblets. There you go. Emma's got one as well. But they're very nice little cutters, and like I said, they're actually cutters rather than scrapers, so they're excellent little tools. I think the place where carbide cutters really come in, I know. Sorry, I put my camera back. I know Andrew Hall teaches a guy. He's based up north near Newcastle Way, County Durham, I think. And I know he teaches a guy. I believe the guy's had a stroke and he's lost some use of one of his arms, I think. And so he could keep on turning. Andrew sort of taught him with carbide tools. And I think for people like that who are going to struggle with traditional tools, I think they're fantastic. If it keeps people turning when they perhaps ordinarily wouldn't be able to, then I think that's fantastic. But for your everyday turner, they take some of the challenge out of it, really, because they are easy tools. The idea is you stick them in and that's it. But if you take the challenge away, I don't know why bother. It's supposed to be hard.
Yeah.
And you lose some of the satisfaction of being able to do something if it was easy all along.
Yeah.
I don't know what you think, David.
Can they be used
for me,
sorry, Dave. Can they be used as a starting point to build a bit of confidence, or is it something that like learning to drive in a manual car and then to make it easy, and then taking the step up to learning to drive in an automatic and then trying to transfer to a manual is very difficult. Is it sort of the same sort of thing, or I don't know?
Yeah, I would say that's a pretty good. Yeah. Go on, David. Sorry.
Yeah, it is a good analogy. That's the word you were looking for.
Yeah.
Yeah. In my opinion, you're better off starting with traditional tools, definitely. And I also think that carbide tools do have a use, but only where you can't get with a bowl gouge or a spindle gouge or otherwise. That's my opinion on them. And I'm like you, Richard. I use the hooked cutters. You get a far superior finish with those as opposed to the scraper type, which basically does what it says on the tin. It scrapes the timber, and it's inevitable you're going to get some tear out. So for me, it's
I mean, I think they
and
work
only
far
where I
better
can't
than
use
they've
a
got.
traditional tool.
Sorry, I think they work far better than they've got any right to work, if I'm honest. But like you say, they are just scrapers. So they are sort of limited in that way. I know. Going back to that question you just asked, Terry, about are they good for beginners? I know at the AAW in America, they often have an area roped off for to try and get kids involved in turning, and there might be 10 or 15 kids and maybe one instructor. And in a place like that, then again, the easy tools are quite good because people can pretty much be left to do it because very little is going to go wrong. If there's only one person to several turners, then again, it's a way of getting kids involved easily and safely. And if you can maybe get them hooked, then you might be able to get them into it, later on. But again, for a one person trying to get into turning, I think you're better off going through the learning curve of traditional tools, really, if you can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you very much. So I've got a lot of people lined up to come on screen and ask questions. So we'll get going with those. Thank you for that. I know more about carbide tools than I did 5 minutes ago, so that's brilliant. And we've got Andy Matthews coming on first. So Andy, I'm going to bring you on screen now.
Evening, all.
Evening. Give you the screen, and you've got a question for us. Tell us something about yourself, Andy. Where are you from? For those that don't know you, and what do you do?
I'm from Hampshire, south of England. I've been turning about 4.5 years. I work in partnership with YFB. You can find us on YouTube as Turn and Burn UK. We do wood turning and pyrography.
Excellent. And what do you want to ask tonight, Andy? Good to see you, by the way, mate.
It was a question about mounting timber in the chuck. Once you've cut your tenon, you're taught that when you cut a tenon, you cut it at an angle to match the angle on the jaws. But I was once told, I overheard a chat at the wood turning club, that if you don't know the angle of the jaws, you can just use a straight tenon, and as you tighten the jaws into the timber, it'll bite into the timber and hold it just as well. I wondered if that was true and if it was safe.
Thank you. So, okay, thank you, Andy. So, team, what do you think on that? Anyone? What are your thoughts about work holdings? It's such an important thing. I see a lot of YouTube videos where the timber comes flying out of the chuck, and they said, "Oh, wasn't that funny?" No, it's not. As far as I'm concerned, it really shouldn't happen. Getting even more contentious there. If the timber's held in place properly, unless it splits or falls apart, I'm of the opinion that surely it shouldn't come out at all. Wood turning can be a dangerous hobby. Let's not make it any more dangerous. Work holding. Richard, I think you've got an opinion on that one.
So basically, in a perfect world, you want to know what size the tenon for your chuck needs to be. Usually, it would come with the manufacturer's sort of instructions. I quite often use the Axminster C jaws, which see if we can show those. I've taken one out there just to show you how it grips. But the C jaws grip on a 56 mil tenon, ideally. The nice thing about scroll chucks, as opposed to the old-fashioned sort, which were kind of collet chucks, you had to be very, very precise on the size. And if you weren't within a millimetre or so, they just wouldn't really do the job properly. The nice thing about a scroll chuck, you've got a lot more leeway, so you can go 5 mil, perhaps a bit more above and below the ideal size, relatively safely. Really, they are excellent. But if you know the exact size, then that's what you're aiming for. As far as this having the bevels or the dovetails at different angles, again, I think you're better off trying to get close, but there's a few variables. Certainly for things like wet wood, there's a lot more crush in it, so it's going to form to a jaw better. But I would always put something of a dovetail on because it's going to be more secure. is what I would say. The main thing really, and again, I'll pop you onto this picture. The main thing about chucks really is understanding how they work. They work in two ways. Now, I've removed a jaw here just so you can see in there a lot better. Obviously, you'd never use a chuck like this. It kind of goes without saying, but it's there just for illustrative purposes. Now, the C jaws are a bit weird. They're a bit of an odd shape. They're not really a classic dovetail. They've got this kind of step shape at the top. The easiest way to do them, though, is to just turn a slight dovetail, and you'll find that holds really nicely. And that is very, very secure. But the way that a chuck works, it works in two important ways. It grips the timber, which is sort of the obvious way, but also what you need is this little step. And it doesn't have to be huge, but you do need this step, and it's sort of like a bearing surface, and you can see that it seats against the face of the jaw. Hopefully that kind of makes sense. And what that does, it prevents the leverage. It counteracts the leverage of your turning. If you're turning, say, a bowl, for example, when you're going in with your bowl gouge, you're effectively using a 16-inch lever to try and lever the bit of wood off of the chuck. And what you find is by putting that little step on, it seats across the face of the jaw, and it gives you a whole load of extra stability, and it sort of counters that leverage force. So that's probably more important than getting your dovetails to an exact angle. But my advice would be to always put a slight dovetail on, even if it's not exact. I don't know what you guys think as well.
Dave?
Yeah. Hello. Yeah. I'm definitely with you on that, Richard, wholeheartedly. Now, one of the things to mention, you've asked about the angle. Now, different chucks have very slight angles on the jaws. I can tell you that the chucks are exactly 10.5 degrees on the dovetails. But I think something that's a bit overrated on this, trying to do exact digs and things, and as long as it's near enough, generally it grips. But one important thing is the diameter of the spigot or the recess that you put in onto your wood. And I've got a chuck with me here. It's not got traditional 50mm jaws on. These are slightly bigger. But one thing that you need to know is the size inside or outside, depending on which chucking point you're doing. And these jaws are made as a complete disc when they're made, and then they're cut into 4. And the width of the saw cut is generally around 2mm. So that tells me that when these jaws are open 2mm, I can get it right. When these jaws are open 2mm, they're back to being a true circle. So that means if you make your chucking point that size, whether it's external or internal, it's going to grip all the way around. If you made it too big, I'll just open this up. What happens is it's becoming more like a square with rounded corners as it opens. And if I had to open, just say it was an internal chucking point, if I had to open it to tighten that up inside, it's only going to grip on these high points around the edge and not the whole way around. There's the picture to show what I mean. So if you make it, say, 2mm or 3mm, you're not to a millimetre or so, bigger than the closed jaws, and then you'll get grip all the way around the chuck. And if you get that right, and you get a dovetail inside, now a lot of people use a skew to put a dovetail in. As I say, it doesn't need to be exact as long as you've got one in. But the other thing to bear in mind is, if you were doing a recessed chucking point, the size of the foot on the bowl, because you don't want that too narrow. Otherwise, when you open your chuck up, it's just going to break through, or when you start turning it. So make sure you've got a wide enough foot. Generally speaking, your foot wants to be 1/3 of the overall size of the bowl to your perfect proportions. But the most important thing is getting the diameter of your chucking points right, so that you know you've got that grip all the way around. And if you do, You don't need to go half-inch deep with them or something like that. You can just 3 or 4 mils, fine, and it will hold. Okay.
Okay, brilliant. Okay, I think that's possibly answered. Probably everything answered there. Any further comments? No, Emma's nodding her head, saying yeah, that's fine. Andy, I'm going to bring you back on so you can we can just check with you. I know someone says like the Brady Bunch keep moving this around, but I'm going to carry on anyway. Andy, did that answer your question? Did that give you what you needed to know? Yeah.
Yes, yeah. Thank you very much. That was really clear. Thanks for the clear explanation. Makes a lot of sense.
All right, brilliant. Andy, thanks for coming on tonight, asking the question, and being the first one on as well to do it. A little bit nerve-wracking. So, yeah, appreciate that, mate, and hope to catch up with you properly soon.
No worries.
You take care. Thanks a lot.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
I'm supposed to have a nifty little thing there that I can do. There we go. That one.
Yeah.
Yeah, it nearly worked. Anyway, we've got another question coming in. So going to bring on Dave Bamford now, who's got a question for us. So Dave, bring you onto the screen and let you ask your question. Whereabouts are you in the country, Dave?
Just live north of Newcastle in Northumberland. I haven't started my turning journey yet. It was supposed to start March last year, but unfortunately COVID happened, so I'm standing on the sidelines looking in as it was. The question for the panel is about storing finishing products in a shed. I've recently had a log cabin built, similar to what Emma's got, but much smaller. The walls are 44 mil thick. There's no insulation and no heating. So if I can get the panel's comments on that, please.
Okay, Dave, thank you. So, alrighty, let's see what we've got on there. I need to move myself off of here. So, actually, I'm going to answer some of that question to begin with, because looking after your products is really important. Now, most of the stuff that we have isn't particularly susceptible to frost or cold damage, so long as it's looked after. The things you need to be careful of are the acrylics, and not the aerosols. They're usually okay, but things like the acrylic sanding seal and the acrylic lacquer in the bottles and the end seal, funnily enough, if they get frost damage, it kills them completely. That's it. They don't come back. They will freeze. They will form crystals in the liquid, and although it will thaw out, it won't thaw back. It won't come back to the original consistency. So if you are using those products, you need to be really careful. And when it is frosty, keep them off the keep them somewhere warm if you can. Take them indoors, or just some sort of insulation to keep them from the frost. Now, funnily enough, another product that does suffer from the cold or is affected by it is the tung oil, and that will freeze. That will go into a solid block. Isn't quite the right word, but it goes to like a jelly, and it will thaw back out again. And once it does that, it's absolutely fine. But there's another one to watch out for. And if you go to your tung oil and it's a solid block, then don't worry about it, because it will come back to it. End seal doesn't cope with storing in low temperatures. It's frost damage is the thing that you're looking out for on it, and it will just ruin it completely. So you need to make sure you keep it away from frost. But the other thing you need to watch out for as well is the conditions that you apply your finishes in, and you need to make sure that it's a fairly warm area. Damp is actually the real danger. That's the thing that's going to be the most do the most damage to your finishing. So a damp atmosphere is not good. And I know that Stephen Madden's got this wonderful little contraption he's made, which I'm going to be putting it into the newsletter in a couple of weeks, because frost damage and cold damage and damp is something that we talk about a lot in the newsletter. But Emma, obviously, David's got a log cabin a bit similar to yours there, not quite as big apparently. So what are your thoughts? Anything you've got anything on that?
I have found that my cabin it's the same thickness of logs as yours is, Dave. One thing that we have done, which I think is, I know it's not finishing related, but it is in a way. The one thing that we did insulate was the floor. So we made sure that we put some blocks of Kingspan insulation down under the floor, because that helps to prevent like your damp rising. I have never had any problems with damp in here, but I do have sources of heating, but they are not left on all the time. So periods of time, especially before Christmas, while I wasn't in here for weeks on end, it wasn't heated, and I've not had any problems with frost or damp at all. My finishes are stored in just a metal cabinet, so they're just in that bottom drawer, so they are literally all chucked in there together. There's finishes and
it's purple, of course.
Oh yeah, I had to paint that. I had to paint it to match. But that's where I store all mine. It's used to be quite close to where my log burner is. It was right next to it actually, and I have to admit, the only thing that did have a little bit of a reaction to that, because it got so warm, I know it's ridiculous because they're flammable, but was the cut and polish, and it slightly separated a little bit. But I just gave it a mix and it mixed back in absolutely fine. So I had the opposite, really, that I'd made things too warm, which is why I've moved them to the other side of the cabin now. But yeah, I haven't had any problems. So
Fantastic.
there you go.
Thank you very much. Richard, Dave, any experience on cold workshops?
I don't. I have central heating.
It's all right for some. I'm sitting in my workshop shivering at the minute, thank you.
Right.
It does get a bit chilly in here in winter. I don't have too much trouble with finishing, although, to be fair, a lot of my products go out unfinished. Certainly my production stuff, it's all sanded and the customers finish it. So often I will oil or I will spray lacquer, but like Terry said, they're not really problems. I have more problems with gluing, to be honest, because you can't really use white P. I know it's not necessarily relevant for finishing, but you can't really use white sort of PVA type glue below about 10 degrees. As it dries, rather than drying clear, it dries like a white, almost like a powder sometimes if it's really cold, and it doesn't give quite such a good joint. So I can't really come in the winter. I can't come in and do a glue up first thing in the morning. I have to get the old radiator going a bit first before I can do any gluing, which is a bit troublesome at this time of year. But in the summer, it's not too bad in here. But yeah, winter do get a bit chilly. The old thermals and the radiators come out for that. Yeah.
Yeah, I can sympathise on that. Our warehouse is rather large and not particularly airtight, so we get quite cold. We've got some nice warm areas that we've set up for the most of the work, but yeah, it's just impossible to heat. So yeah, I sympathise on that one, Richard. So yeah, David, don't mention central heating again, please. So,
you lot sitting in your t-shirts.
Yeah,
Dave, I'll bring you back on screen for a second. Was that did that help? Did that set you in the right direction?
Yeah, there's a couple of good pointers from Emma as regards the Kingspan on the floor. I'll have to think about that because I've got a concrete floor all the way through the shed at the moment.
Yeah. But yep, you're happy with the answer, yeah?
Yeah, that's fine, thanks, yeah.
Fantastic, all right, brilliant. Well, thank you very much for coming on, Dave, and hopefully we'll speak again soon. Take care. Oh, look, I nearly got that right. Yeah, that was going so well, wasn't it? I told you there'd be stuff that goes wrong. So, folks, if I can ask, once you've asked your question, hopefully you can jump over onto YouTube and watch the rest of the show. If I can ask you to exit from the broadcast studio, please, if you don't mind. There's a limit to how many I can have waiting, so I've got a couple of people trying to get in for later on. So if you're happy enough to do that, to leave, that would be really helpful. I didn't realise it was going to be a problem. I'd have warned you beforehand. So thank you, Andy. And that's brilliant. All right, so we've there's another question coming up for you. So going to bring on John Edmondson, who's going to ask us. I don't know what he's going to ask us actually. So John, how are you doing? Let's give you the full screen.
Hi.
Hi, John. How are you?
Fine, thanks. Yourself?
Yeah, not too bad, thanks. Whereabouts are you?
I'm in Ruston in Northamptonshire. Go to the sort of Foxwood turning.
Okay.
Not for last year, of course.
All right. With the mic's not picking you up fantastically there, John. So would you like to ask your question for us?
Yeah. When you find an imperfection in wood, how do you decide what to do with it? Is it best to leave it a feature, fill it in, and if so, with what, or condemn the piece as firewood? I'm thinking of things like knots, cracks, and wormholes. Thank you.
Hang on. Why didn't that work? There, it did. Okay, thank you, John. And actually, you've sent me some examples. Yeah, it's cold here as well. Look at this. I have to put my sweatshirt on. John sent me through a couple of examples of some timber that he's had that has got some imperfections in it. We've all seen those before, obviously. That one there, and that one. So, yeah, what do we think on this one, team? Richard, any thoughts?
Well, that first one would be considered, if not a burr, then it's sort of pippy. If you can buy pippy oak, which is full of that sort of feature. So that one would be considered a feature on its own without really doing anything with it. For me, personally, I'm not very good dealing with cracks. I've tried a few different things over time, but I always find cracks are ugly, and partly because of my background in woodworking and kind of more furniture type work. Cracks are a bad thing, so they get chucked out. I know with turning bowls and things like that, you can make features of cracks, but I'm not very good at it. I've tried putting resin in, I've tried putting stuff in. It just looks like a crack that you've put stuff in. I've never been very good at it, and I've never been lucky enough to come across a pretty crack that looks good on its own. So for me, they go in the firewood bag. But I'm not arty. I'm going to pass this over to you two, who are far more talented in that area. Really, I'm just a production turner, so you guys can answer this one, I think.
Okay. All right, Emma, Dave, who wants to go first?
I don't mind.
I don't mind.
Go on then.
Yeah. I think cracks are not ugly, Richard. How dare you? I really like features and like the little knots that you've got, John, on those bowls. I think are lovely. I'm not a particular fan of filling all sorts of things with resins, although I do work with a lot of resin, as any of you who watch my YouTube channel will know. But this is a bowl that I turned a while ago. It's an ash bowl which split as it was being turned, and we've got an example of lacing. So I laced that up as to make a bit of a feature out of it. Do you want to zoom in a little bit? So that's some of the lacing. Now I've used like a staple effect with this lacing. So if I turn it to the inside, you actually can't see the lacing, and it just means it's still a fairly functional bowl. Obviously not for anything apart from fruit, but it still keeps it fairly functional, and you're not got anything impeding on that. But I like things like that. Dave, have you got any thoughts?
Yeah, there's lots of things to bear in mind. Some of the pieces have little pippy knots in there that you were showing us. I agree with you, Richard. They do look good if they're just oiled or something like that and left. But what you can do if you want to is you can fill them with, one of the things I use is copper and super glue. It's copper dust. You can buy it from most wood turning places. and I layer it up so that it sits proud on the surface. And then when you sand it back, it sands quite easily. It looks like a copper streak, a small crack or something like that. But in particular, around knots, if you get a void around a knot, if you fill that with either super glue or resin or araldite or something like that, and coffee dust, just plain straightforward coffee dust, by the time you've sanded it, it looks like part of the knot. It's a nice dark colour. And as Emma said, there's always resins and things like that which you can use. But in a lot of cases, I think it depends on the piece itself. If it's a nice piece of fir elm or something, then I wouldn't hesitate. I'd just leave it as it is. I'd just oil it or whatever finish you decide to put on it and leave it. Because it's an imperfection in theory, but it also adds to the look of it and brings more money in if you sell it. Yeah.
The one thing I would want to add, if I can just jump in again, is we've been talking about splits and cracks and making those usable, but you also need to know when a piece of wood is no longer safe to turn, and that's something that comes up a lot on Facebook groups, that people are seeing all these split pieces of wood and bits of firewood and stuff that they're turning. But sometimes it's just downright dangerous. This piece here is again a piece of ash, and it started to crack similar to its larger brother. But this is going to end up going on the fire because it started to split exactly the same way. And then I tried to super glue it because sometimes you can stabilize things a little bit if you super glue it, but the split has actually now continued, and it's gone all the way straight through and has gone right through the foot of the bowl. That is not something that I would recommend continuing with, because it's gone past halfway as that split. It's only being really held together by about a third of the piece of wood. So something like that, and the weight of it, bin it. That's going on the fire, is that, I'm afraid. So you need to look at your pieces of wood really carefully and not kind of think, oh yeah, there's a split in it, I can do something with it. Not always the case at all, guys. So just be safe. And if you're not sure, that's what the Facebook groups are there for. Ask, and if somebody says to you, no, bin it, then it's possibly a wise idea.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you, Emma. John, let's bring you back on. Put you back on screen there. Are you illuminated?
Yes, thanks to all of the comments they made. To an extent, it is a question. Every bit of wood, you've got to decide on that one separately.
Yeah. I think that's an important point Emma made as well about making, keeping it safe, because it's something I possibly wouldn't have considered immediately, but once it gets past a certain point, then it's time to bin it. So lovely. John, thanks very much for coming on screen to ask the question. Good to see you, and thanks for joining in tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you. Cheers now. Bye-bye. So thank you. Thanks to John. There we go. All right. It's always very unceremonious when people leave, so I do apologise. It's very, very difficult. So I'm going to dive into my email mailbag now. We've got a question here from Sydney Bracken, who was unable to come on screen tonight, and he's asking what machine speed, so what speed do you have the lathe running at, do you use for sanding, and do you vary it at all as you progress through the greys, through the different grits that you're working with? So who wants to take that one? Volunteers. Emma, do you want to dive in on that one?
I can do, yeah.
Anyone think we had a plan, wouldn't you? But,
sorry, I was just moving something and I've only heard the question. Which question are we on to? Drop me in it, Terry, thanks. You're so professional.
This is the speeds for sanding out. Do you change it as you go?
Over me. I just didn't take
I know
it
when you're trying to do too many things at once. I know exactly.
If I try to do more than one thing at once, I've had it. I can't multitask. So sanding, yes. I use net abrasives for my sanding, or I use something like a sanding arbor with sanding discs on it, which are solid discs. They're cloth back discs. You have got to be careful with sanding speed, or at least I've found that. Certain timbers don't like getting too hot, and of course, when you are sanding, if you are applying quite a lot of pressure, then you can build up heat in your piece of timber, and it can sometimes cause it to heat shake. There isn't a specific speed I have found that you can say across the board works for everything, but you just got to take each piece of wood individually, really, and it depends what grit you're starting at, the type of abrasive you're using, and I suppose whether it's spindle turning, bowl turning, how much you're trying to do, whether you're shaping it with 40 grit or just taking a little bit off with 400. But I do tend to turn the speed down and back it off a little bit sometimes. If you are doing wet and dry sanding with something like resin, I turn the speed right down to actually allow it to cut better, and to stop it from drying out the wet sanding slurry. So there's all sorts of things to consider, really. I don't know whether any of the other guys can give a more solid answer than that, because that would a bit rubbish, a bit loose.
I think it's. I think one of the problems with wood turning is that so often there isn't people ask a question and they want us to say the answer is A, B, C, and that's it. And so often there just isn't a set answer. There is so many variables on the wood and on things like that. Emma was spot on in that some woods really hate getting hot. If you have something made of yew, is the one that immediately springs to mind. If you that gets a whiff of being too hot, it will just crack. And they're tiny little hairline cracks on the end grain. But they're there and they spoil it, and it is just terrible. You've got to really bring your speed down. You've got to sand and be patient and do one grit and almost stop and let it cool down, and then do the next grit and stop. And it has to be a slow process with something like you. Something like the spindle turning that I do a lot of, a lot of the wood that I use, and the fact that it's spindle, so it's quite thin, and I'm a touch lazy, I can pretty much sand it at the same speed that I turn it. But if you're looking at something like a bowl, which you've got much bigger diameters on bowl, even small bowls, you've got bigger diameters, and so the speed of the outside is much higher to start with, so you're going to get a lot more heat with that as well. So certainly with bowls, I would turn the speed down. If you're power sanding as well, you've got even more heat and friction and what have you with that. So with power sanding, I would go right down, maybe 300, 300, something like that, maybe as low as that. For hand sanding a bowl, maybe 500 to 800, that sort of range. But for spindle turning, then, you know, if you're turning at 1500 or 1800, then you just got to be a bit careful and develop tough fingers, really, because it does get a bit hot if you do just sort of power on through. But generally that is a bit, you know, bad advice to turn to sand fast. Generally you want to be turning down, but you know, you can get away with it on spindle turning. I don't know if Dave's got anything else to add to that.
Yeah, Dave, bring you in. Anything to add on that? I think that was pretty comprehensive, Richard.
I would definitely agree with what Terry and Emma have said there. But there's three things to bear in mind sanding. One is heat, as you've said about heat checks. You need to sand at a slow speed, and I generally recommend 500 or less. And it depends on the piece as well, because when you're turning a bowl, for example, you're in stresses within the timber, and you'll find that it's gone slightly out of shape by the time you finish turning it, ever so slightly, and you can feel it on the outside sometimes. It's bang, bang, bang as it's rotating round. When it's doing that, if you're sanding at a high speed, you're hitting the high spots and missing the low spots. And that's not what you want, in which case just turn it down even further. But the second point to make is that if you're sanding at high speed, you finish up with a mushroom cloud of dust, and your extractor doesn't get a chance to suck it in. It's just everywhere, and you're breathing it in. So that's another good reason. And the third reason, and living in Yorkshire as long as I have, it wears your sandpaper out quicker. So that's not a good thing. But yeah, other than that, I agree with everything that's been said there. It depends on the
That's the wise
individual
thing
piece.
said there at the end, Dave. It's the money side.
So
Yeah.
Emma, say that again.
I says us Northerners know about saving money. The wisest part of a bit of information was Dave about the wearing it out quicker.
Yeah, I've seen you and your safety cloth and stuff. I mean, it's a joy to behold, really. Brilliant. Thank you, team. Thank you for that one. So got another, let's get my running order here. So we've got someone else to come on screen and ask a question for us. So if we can bring on Neil Ralph. Here we are. Let's put you on the main screen, Neil. Good evening. How are you, mate?
Hi, good evening. I'm good, thanks, Terry, and everybody else. So I'm Neil Ralph. I'm actually in God's country in Lancashire, and I run a company called Olive Wood Turning, and therefore I turn quite a bit. Probably 95% of what I turn is olive wood. One of the things I find is I'm not very good with a skew, as I think a lot of people, apart from people like Richard, obviously, who do it professionally, and therefore I practice a lot. One of the things I find is that the skew tends to sort of bounce a bit on the timber. So especially if I'm just trying to do a planing cut, I try and practice using it on planing cuts, roughing down spindles. And so I'm not sure whether it's because the skew's not sharp enough, whether it's the wrong angle, but even sometimes when I know the bevel's rubbing okay, it still seems to do it a bit, or whether I'm putting too much pressure on. I don't know, but the skew I find far more than anything else. It obviously olive's hard, but the skew just bounces on the timber, and I can't get a good finish from it.
Okay, so we're really after some tips on using the skews. So thank you, Neil. Hi, Dave. Wasn't expecting you there. I love it when that happens. This is so good. So okay, Richard, I think you're geared up for this one, aren't you?
My name was mentioned then, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. Skew, so, you've already been volunteered, mate.
Yeah, the skew is a tricky one, to be honest. You know, it takes a lot of practice. Generally, that sort of bevel bounce, the main cause of it is down to putting too much pressure, sort of tool to wood. When you're applying pressure, the only real pressure you want to be applying is the tool down onto the tool rest. Really, the term rubbing the bevel is slightly misleading in that the bevel, if you're rubbing it, is probably too hard. It really needs to glide, or you know, it's very light behind the wood. Often it's down to what you're doing with your front hand. Often that kind of grip with your front hand is a bit too heavy. A lot of most of the movement should come from your body and from your back hand rather than your front hand. Often people grip the tool too hard with that front hand, and that in turn puts too much pressure onto the wood. That front hand, although it looks like a grip, it really is there for stability more than anything else, and to maintain the contact tool to tool rest. You really need to still be able to move the tool within that hand, because the sort of the rolling and the setting the angle of the tool all comes from your backhand, not from your front hand. You're not steering the tool like that, you're steering the tool like that. And this front hand is there just for that bit of stability. So that front hand needs to be very light. The tool needs to be able to move within it. And really, you've got to make sure you're not putting too much pressure onto the wood. The other thing I can do, that's something that really takes a lot of practice more than anything else. You can do it just by rotating the wood by hand. So if you rest the bevel on the wood and just rotate the wood by hand, you can find the kind of sweet spot and how it best cuts, because a sharp skew will will cut the wood as you rotate it by hand. So you can do that, and you can find that right position just by doing that. The other thing I would say is, let me switch over to the other camera so you can have a bit of a close-up on this. If you look at the heel of my tool there, I tend to round them over. So very much like you'll see this quite often in bowl turning, where they remove the heel of the gouge, and it helps you to get around the bowl in a much more smooth curve. I do exactly the same with my skews. So where I don't really use a skew that much, I use what's called a beading and parting tool, but I use it as a skew. So it's just my preference for the tool. But you can see it's hollow ground on an 8-inch wheel, but the heel is softened by rounding it over, and it makes the tool much more friendly to the wood. So having that very harsh heel, if I show you this one, that is sort of factory grind kind of thing. You can see that heel is actually very, very harsh, and that in itself can sort of introduce the bounce that you're talking about. So by rounding over the heel like that, it just softens it, and it makes it can reduce that kind of bevel bounce quite a bit. The other last thing I would say about skews is factory grind is something like that, which is very, very skewed. And actually, what you'll find, if you look at most of the production turners, certainly in this country, their grind is far more square across. And I find that's a far more versatile tool. And you might find that having it more square across will help you a little bit with your angles as well, and your bevel bounce that we're talking about. So there's a few variables to play around with, and I'm afraid it is just a case of practicing and trying different things. But yeah, it's all practice, but that's the main two things. So round over your heel and make sure that front hand isn't putting too much pressure onto the wood. I hope that answers the question.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you. I have unmuted myself. I'm like, yeah, brilliant. Thank you, Richard. Anyone? I mean, that was like a masterclass on the skew chisel, I think. Anyone want to add anything to that?
Can I just say, Terry, it's exactly the same as Richard's been talking there. When you're using a bowl gouge, if you put your pressure against the wood, you'll finish up with chatter lines. And I find if you carry on turning that way, that they'll just go worse and worse. And the best thing to do is do a pull cut with your gouge or whatever, and then start again. And that way you can do it cleanly. And your pressure down onto your tool rest. Yeah.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Sorry, we're having a few issues with your mic, with your internet there, I think, David. But I think we got that one. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Brilliant. So let's bring Neil back on. There we are. Neil, how was that? Has that sent you in the right direction, do you think?
Yeah, it has. I'd seen Richard had posted something on Instagram this week about rotating the work and actually presenting the tool, and you could see it cutting just at sort of hand speed. But the other things about the pressure, I think that's probably the thing where I'm doing it wrong. I'm holding on for dear life every once in a while. So I need to alter my technique a bit, practice more. It's been great. That's really good. Thanks very much.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for joining in tonight, Neil. And yeah, look forward to seeing you again soon. Cheers. Take care.
Cheers.
You got your swoosh that time, Terry. Well done.
Yeah, that looked good, didn't it? That was really another couple of hours. It's right, but we're not going on that long. Don't worry. Emma's already pointed out to me a mistake I've made, so that's just great. Thanks, Emma. But perfect. Now, right. So yeah, moving along there. So Roderick Cable has got a question for us. So let's bring you onto the screen, Roderick. Good to see you. How you doing?
Hello, all good, thank you.
Excellent. And whereabouts in the world are you?
Just to the west of Nottingham.
All right, okay. And how are things up there? What's your weather like? It's cold as down here?
Variable like everyone else.
What can we help you with tonight?
Okay, I've been turning for a couple of years and slowly getting better. Breakout, I think that's a proper term for it, but some people call it something else, but I can't remember what it is. Has caused me problems on and off. I'm getting a bit better, but I'm still left with a surface that isn't that good and doesn't seem to stand out. Now, this is a bowl from a while ago. I think you can probably see how bad it is. Look, there we go. Look at that. Nuts. So it's kind of ruining everything I'm doing at the moment. And any advice on how to get rid of what I call breakout?
Okay, lovely. Thank you very much. Let's go to the team. And oh, there's David. So
Here again.
Well, Dave, did you want to start us off on that one?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Well, from what I saw there, the wood that you're turning is something like spalted beech or silver birch, is it? That in itself is a fairly softish wood. It can have a lot of soft, funky areas in it, and it's prone to tear out. But one of the main things to bear in mind is the way that you're using the tool. Now, the shape that you've got there was quite straight-sided and across the bottom. That in itself is a difficult shape to turn. You're far better off if you could do a nice rounded back and follow the same shape on the inside. It makes it much easier for you. But just show you something here quickly. There's also a lot to do with understanding the timber. Now, I've got a tiny little blank here. Let me get my camera right. And you'll see on the top, wait a minute, there we go. You can see tear out on this side, and there's none on this side. And that has been cut using exactly the same tool, but in a different way. But to understand the timber, you need to look at it. Now, wait a minute, I'm going the wrong way with this. Okay, so you can see on this that the grain runs top to bottom. Now, that tells me that this is the way that that piece of wood has grown in the tree. And across the top here, we've got end grain. And it's always the end grain where you get your tear out. Now, if you look at this under a magnifying glass, you'd see that it's made up of millions of little straws. This is actually one of Andrew Hall's analogies of it, and I think it works very well. It's made up of millions of straws so that it can get moisture to the top branches of the tree. Now, if you imagine trying to cut a bunch of straws across the top there, what you're going to finish up with is you're going to smash your way through them. So what you need to do is angle the gouge differently. Now, the tear out on that side with, wait a minute, the side with the tear out, this side, all I've done there is use the tip of the tool and pulled it across at 90 degrees to the wood. And that's caused all that, sorry, that tear out. But if you alter the angle of the chisel, and instead of pulling, are you right? I'll just take it that you're right-handed. But if you're, instead of just pulling the chisel with your left hand or pushing it with your left hand, angle it so that the bevel is on the wood behind the cut and push with your right hand. I've got something here that gives you the idea. You'll see there's the, oh, hang on, wrong way again. There's the 45-degree angle on the bevel. And that needs to be touching the wood, and you need to push the chisel into the cut. And that way, the cutting edge is opening the fibres, and the bevel is laying it back down behind the cut. And that way, you'll get much smoother cuts and less tear out. But again, as I say, it's much easier if you could hold this up where I can. If you could turn a bowl that sort of shape, you'll get a much better, an easier cut and cleaner cut, as opposed to one that's roughly that shape. That looks like a face now, doesn't it?
Well, I was thinking much the same there, Dave. I was wondering where you were going with that.
Well, I hope that makes sense to you, because once you get that outside shape, you'll be cutting from there and out to the outside edge. Then when you come to do the inside, you just the same shape and you follow it right round to the centre. And it's much easier to cut rather than trying to cut down and then across. Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, thank you, Dave. That was brilliant. A little biology, a little bit of art there as well, and fantastic, mate. And
yeah,
and hopefully some helpful information there as well. Emma, do you have anything you'd like to add on that one, maybe?
Dave's really covered it. Like he's explained the structure of it, and the difficulty that I can see, similarly to what Dave sort of picked out, was the shape of your internal curve, Roderick, because it is flat-sided. You essentially, as you're coming down the side, you're getting fairly good cut, but then as you're reaching that kind of corner internally, you're lifting the bevel off the tool and you're kind of skating across with the tip, which is going to bounce and cause tear out or break out. Some people like to use scrapers to try and finish off the inside of a ball and just try and improve. But again, similarly to what Dave said, with using very sort of punky, soft woods, you're going to get tear out. It's going to be very, very difficult to avoid it unless you've got very sharp tools and you're really kind of confident with your skill, should I say. So yeah, there's not really much else I can add to it. The type of wood is important that you do use.
Excellent, thank you. I'm thinking this is quite a comprehensive answer. Richard, anything to?
Yeah, the guys covered it there really. You're kind of making life hard for yourself, A, with the shape, and B, with the wood. So yeah, that more open, smooth curves are always a bit easier to cut through and arguably slightly more attractive. So if you can get that sweeping curve, it's sort of a win-win really. If you've got a difficult wood like that and it is tearing, sometimes if it is a nasty bit of wood, if it's a bit too far spalted, you're going to get tear out no matter how good you are, no matter how sharp your tools are, whatever. So you can also add a bit of finish of some sort. I quite often add a bit of sanding sealer onto it. If it's really bad, you can use a thin super glue even, which just supports the fibers that are tearing, and that can help you get that cleaner cut. But also your tool presentation, like Dave said, if you're often people go inside a bowl and they have the gouge, the flute right on its side like that, and actually that's quite a harsh cut. You really want to get that gouge open a bit more, so it's actually more at kind of, that's 2 o'clock for me, it looks like 10 o'clock for you. that kind of angle. If your flute is right over on its side like that, it's going to be a really poor finish. So open your flute a little bit and drop your handle. Often people are in like that, and it, like Emma said, that can cause sort of skating and vibration. If you can drop your handle and open your flute a little bit, not all the way, that's too far, somewhere there, that's going to give you a much cleaner cut. So yeah, it's all about sharp tools, good presentation, nice sweeping shape, and a bit of magic spray.
Brilliant, and a little plug in there as well. Thank you very much, Richard. That was brilliant. Funnily enough, yeah, I've got something to send you actually to play with. A new product we're experimenting with, but that's the story for another day. Let's bring Roderick back in there. Roderick,
Thank you.
Has that helped you?
Yeah, that's helped me quite a lot. I've had a few of these weird bits, and whatever I've done, there seems to have caused lots of tear out. And whereas I was practicing with a bit of pine, and that seems to have less of it, which is maybe I'm getting better than when I did that one. Thank you.
The practice is obviously working. So
it seems to be important.
Excellent. We'll keep at it. Thank you very much for joining us tonight, Roderick, and you take care. Hope we'll see you again soon. Cheers.
Thank you very much indeed for your help.
Bye. Oh, I keep forgetting to change.
Swoosh.
I can't actually. Yeah, I know we should
do it myself. Swoosh.
I can't do it. I can't take someone out and bring it back to the screen. Now, Richard, I think, was trying to remind me earlier that I missed a question out that we were going to deal with. So I'm going to sort of step back and do that one. It's a question from Tim Hodkinson, who is unable to join us this evening. He's actually a GP and working very hard at the moment. So, just good to have you out there, Tim. And he says, I'm making a 3-legged stool for my daughter. He says, once I've turned all the parts and finished assembly with the legs at a slight angle, are there any tricks or tips on how to make the feet flush level with the floor? And I think that's a really interesting question, actually. And I think also, obviously, we're talking about a 3-legged stool here, but a 4-legged stool or a chair, I think we should add that one in as well, because I'm sure that's probably even harder, because it will stand on 3 legs. One that's wrong is going to upset the whole thing. So, who's taking that one?
Yeah, I can take that if you want.
Richard. Well, Richard's ready for this one. I know he's chomping at the bit for it. So go on, Richard.
So let me take you over to this one. So this is a stool I make in a demo, and it's a little 3-legged stool. And 3-legged stools obviously are far easier to make, because even if one of your legs is an inch shorter, it isn't really going to rock. They are naturally very stable stools. So you can, make that as simple as, putting a tape measure against it and checking, and that's fine. So 3-legged stools, not so much of a problem. They're relatively straightforward. The tricky thing comes if you start making a 4-legged stool. Let's drop you down a little bit. That's obviously a much taller stool. This one, actually, I made this a few years ago, and it has got a bit of a rock on it. So the way you want to do it, and I brought it over here because this is my table saw bed, so it is nice and flat. Obviously, if you've got a flat bench, then great, but having a nice flat surface is ideal here. And you can see there's a bit of rock on that. So the first thing to do is to try and stabilize that. So you can use some sort of shims. So these are just offcuts of timber. That one, I think, when I was on a practice. So that one goes in there. Even actually a bit of paper would probably do it on this one. There you go. That stopped it rocking.
Sometimes beer mats are really good. Sorry.
So sometimes that's enough to level it. But once you've got it level, and you can just sort of eyeball how level the top is at this point, or you can go as far as putting kind of spirit levels on it and things like that. But it depends how level your work surface is as well. But once you've got it level, then all you've got to do is get yourself a pencil. You can then, depending on your heights and your levels, you might want to put a pencil on a bit of board or something like that, and then you can literally go around and mark all of your legs at that point, and that gives you the baseline. And from there you can either plane them if you've got nice sharp planes, or you can take it over to a sander, a belt sander, or a disc sander or something like that, and just sand them back to the line. Put a little chamfer on the edge with a block plane, and that's the best way of doing it, really. Hope that made sense. I hope it's clear.
Yeah, that seemed fine, Richard. Even I understood that. So it's a bit of a cheat, really, but it's just brilliantly simple. So
yeah, it's the way the Windsor chair makers do it. It's all about getting it level on wedges or some sort of shims of some sort, just to get it flat and stop it rocking. But having a level surface to work from is really important, because floors are notoriously wonky, but a flat table saw or a planer or something like that that's nice and flat and cast iron is perfect for that kind of thing.
Fantastic, brilliant. I'm sure Tim will be happy with that. Thank you very much indeed. Anyone want to add anything to that? I think that covered it, really. Deafening silence. Tumbleweed rolls across the screen. So I've got another question from my email post bag here, which I'm going to give to Dave, because I'm like that. And it's from John, who wants to make a light shade and he wants to make it out of wood. He wants to turn it, and obviously he wants the shade itself to be translucent. And really, what's the best way of going about that? If there's a particular thickness he should be aiming for, or a particular technique, Dave? I think you've made some of these in the past.
Yes.
So any thoughts you want to? Yeah.
Yeah. Now, the thing I've always done with these is turn them wet, preferably freshly cut, wet through wood. And what I've done, I made a gadget which I've got here, and this is 2 Morse tape, so it goes straight into my tailstop, and that goes inside the vessel once I get somewhere near the wall thickness that I'm looking for. Now, I usually turn mine round to about 3 millimeter wall thickness. But what you get with a light inside it, and it works even better if you're turning in the dark, you can see the light glow through. And what you want to do is get a nice even shade of glow all the way through the shade. Take your first inch of the shade down to 3 millimeters, and then follow it all the way through, sending it further into the shade as you do it, and turn the outside and take that down to 3 millimeters. So the thicknessing is all done on the outside, not the inside. Now, as I say, this is an old one that I made a long time ago. So that goes straight into my tailstop. You can get nice modern LED ones these days. And I've got one here. Tiny little ones. Just hold it still, I'm shaking. Tiny little ones, these, and they give off a great light. It's fully round. And these can go right through your tailstop, and preferably mounted in a piece of wood in the tailstop. But I mean, the amount of light these give off, and it's a nice, see what I mean? Very bright. And they work brilliantly. But as I say, once you've got a nice finish on the inside, and say you've got maybe a 5mm wall, and you've got a nice finish on the inside, do all the thinning out on the outside and have a light on the inside to do it. And that way you can turn it right down as thin as you want to, and hopefully you won't go through the side. Just try and keep the glow of the light even all the way through. Ash works well for lampshades, as would maybe sycamore or beech. I wouldn't go for anything soft like pine or anything too hard, maybe like oak. But you want a nice medium wood. Ash, beech, or sycamore are perfect. Okay.
Excellent.
I don't think there's anything further I can add.
Okay, now that's brilliant. Thank you very much. Anyone else been doing thin turning? No. Okay, that's fine. That's all right. We're heading towards our finish time. So we'd finish by 9. So we'll move along. Thank you, Dave, for that very comprehensive answer. Those LED lights are brilliant.
Okay.
You should have put that on earlier. We'd be able to see you better. So
yeah, that's
brilliant. So yeah, there we go. So yeah, Emma, sorry to see you so hungry there. Now, in a different world, and if we were all together, we'd all go out for a dinner afterwards. Wouldn't that be great? But we can't. Yeah. So yeah, I owe you all the dinner. Okay, sometime. Yeah.
It's on record now, Terry. That is. You're not getting out of that.
Get to the weekender. Get to the weekender. That'll be there. That'll be brilliant. So yeah, fingers crossed we can do that. So another question coming in there, and I'm gonna bring Leona Fay on screen. So Leona, thank you very much for joining us tonight. Really good to have you there. Let's give you the full screen. Hi there. So how are things with you? Where are you for people who don't know you?
I'm in County Meath in Ireland.
Okay.
In the east of Ireland.
How long have you been wood turning?
It'll be coming up in 5 years this year. Not that you can tell from my work, but it's coming up on 5 years.
And you're enjoying it?
I do. I like it. Yeah, it's a break from the house, so it's my little secret away in here doing my wood turning, so it's great.
Excellent. And what would you like to ask the panel tonight?
My question is, I've had a complete disaster this week in the workshop. Everything that could possibly go wrong has gone wrong. So my question is to the guys, what is the worst thing that has gone wrong on you, either in your workshop or during a live demonstration?
That's brilliant. Thank you, Leah. I'll put the team back on screen and see what they want to confess to. Thank you. We'll come back to you.
That's a good one.
Yeah. Well, Dave, that was brave of you to say that. Shall we put you on first then?
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Right. I don't know about a funny thing. It wasn't very funny. Hey, Richard. It wasn't very at the time when it happened. This, I can tell you that. I took a job over the phone. It was a phone call message, and a guy asked me for 100 rollers. He wanted me to make these rollers, and he gave me the measurements over the phone: 3/4 of an inch with a 1/2 inch hole through the middle, 3/4 of an inch long, and I think there was an inch in diameter. Oh no, sorry, 3/4 of an inch diameter. That was it, with a 1/2 inch hole through the middle. And he wanted 100 of them, and he wanted them by Wednesday, and this was Monday. And I had a lot of work on already. So I said to this guy, I'll do my best. I'll try and get them done for you. Anyway, I worked late because I got so much work on, and I got them done. And I rang him up Wednesday morning. I said, they're ready to pick up. And then I said to him, just out of curiosity, what are these rollers for? He said, they're for lawn mowers. I said, so what size are they? He said, 3 1/4 inch in diameter, not 3/4 of an inch. I had to make all the lot again in a hurry. And I quoted for the other ones. Yeah. Hey. Well, that wasn't very good.
But you recovered from it, so that's good. So
I got them done actually by Wednesday night.
Brilliant.
So they were ready to pick up for him. Yeah.
See, amazing what you can do when you have to. Brilliant.
Yeah.
Thank you. That was good fun. Richard? Yeah?
Like Dave, it's these stories are only funny when you look back at them. At the time, they're hideous, aren't they? I think the one that springs to mind for me is, so set the scene. This is 2016. It's the AAW Symposium in Atlanta. It's the 25th anniversary symposium, so it's a big one. And they invite me over to be the headline act for spindle turning. So they fly me 4,000 miles to Atlanta to talk about turning spindles using a skew chisel. I start the demo, and the first bead that I roll with the skew, I get a massive catch. This is, bear in mind, I've gone to the biggest event in the world for wood turning. I've been flown 4,000 miles as a skew chisel expert, and I get a massive catch on this bead. I got through it. I finished the demo. It all went well in the end. But as I was sort of thinking through what had gone wrong, because I always kind of try and work out what I've done, I realized what the problem was, and I was using a brand new Powermatic lathe, so the big yellow lathes, and it had a fresh coat, quite a thick coat of yellow paint all over it, including on the tool rest. And everybody knows that you should have a nice smooth tool rest when you're turning. So this was a lesson to me, and it more of a reminder, a very stark reminder. And I spent the next sort of half an hour before my next demo, sanding off this thick layer of paint off of this bright yellow tool rest so that it was smooth. And I never got another catch throughout the whole of the seminar. But yeah, that first one, I was mortified that I'd been presented as this, skew chisel expert, and here's me getting a massive catch on my first demo. But I blame Powermatic for that.
I think it sounds like they set you up there. It's like, they built you up and then they knock you down, mate. What can you say? Emma's claiming to have nothing to own up to here, but go on, Emma.
I've got loads. I don't want to do it. Let me have a think. So the beginning of this year, last week, I had a catch on the first demo of the year, and that just pulled the piece of acacia I was turning straight out of the lathe. But I did catch it. It was classic when I caught it. So I had that this year. I've had a couple of injuries. I injured myself at Woodworks at Daventry a few years ago. I just started again. I just started the demonstration. I'd turned everything and I was sanding, and I was using a brand new chuck with new jaws, and I just started sanding the piece and caught my finger on one of the jaws and took a massive chunk out my finger, which was bleeding everywhere, and I had to kind of try and hide that and finish the piece till I could bandage myself up. And then, of course, anybody that watches the YouTube channel that I have will know all about me turning mushrooms on a live stream and how well that went. I will not go into it any further.
Yeah, I think we should definitely draw a veil on that one because I was there watching that. I try and catch up with most.
All right, okay, great.
I was polite. I didn't say anything, but that is one of the problems with turning. It makes a lot of cylindrical items, and that's as far as I'm going to go with that, really. So that's brilliant. So thank you very much for those confessions, Leona. Thank you very much. Say again, mate. Sorry, Dave.
You have a confession.
My mistakes are probably as much sort of bad decisions as much as anything else. Various products, various things that didn't quite work out as they were supposed to. We don't talk about Canada at the moment. We had this idea that our products would be popular in Canada. We had lots and lots of people inquiring about them. So we went through the whole process, which was quite a long process of getting our spirit stains over to Canada. We set up a deal with a warehouse over there to distribute them for us. We let everyone know that the spirit stains were now available, and please send your orders in. And everyone came back to us and said, "Oh yeah, okay, thanks for letting us know." And that was kind of it. And we ended up bringing virtually the whole lot back. So, in fact, our spirit stains have been over to Canada and had a nice little trip across the ocean. I haven't been there, so they've done better than I have. So that's probably one of the worst things that's happened recently. The stains all got reused. We rebottled them, and it's absolutely fine. But it's kind of like an expensive thing there. Helen, no, we're not talking about pole dancing. Okay, that's just out of it completely.
No.
So
No.
Leona, thanks for asking that. That was good fun. And anything you want to roll
No
up
problem,
to,
guys.
or shall I just let you disappear?
Not a thing.
Not a thing.
Not a thing.
Thanks so much for that. And we'll hopefully see you again soon. You take care.
Thanks a lot.
Enjoy turning. Bye-bye.
Bye.
And there we go once again. Look, I've got it. I'm going to use.
Yay!
Swoosh.
Yay! There you go. So sometimes it works. Sometimes it works. So we've got a bit of a finishing question now. So Paul's asked about the best way to get a high gloss finish using our products. So it's. I know that Emma's already said that she doesn't really do high gloss, but actually you do, because you're. The techniques that you use on polishing your resin are pretty much the same sort of idea. You're obviously polishing them to a bright finish, and with to getting a bright finish, there are two things that are important to it. The first one is getting the surface as smooth as possible, and that includes your intercoat sanding. Every coating that you put on, you need to start off with a very smooth surface on the timber first, and then every coating that you put on after that, you want to sand down as smooth as possible, almost to the point that in itself is giving a shine, and that will build up the depth of the gloss. So I've got a piece here, so I've got to be careful when I pick it up, so I don't want to drop it. There we go, to get that to the light. So there you go. That's such a good gloss. You can see the screen reflecting in it, so you can see everything that I've got going there. This was made and given to me by the wonderful Gary Lowe. Gary, I don't know if you're out there or not, but thank you very much. Our iridescent paints over the ebonizing lacquer, and then about 5 or 6 coats of acrylic gloss lacquer on top to give it the shine. Now, when you're using a lacquer, we don't normally recommend going more than 3 coats. The weight of the lacquer itself will cause the coating underneath to start to crack. But what Gary does, and the way to get around that, is each coat that goes on is sanded back quite dramatically, and that's what you need to do. So whereas normally you're just denibbing it to get to a smooth surface, you actually want to remove just a little bit so that you have a you have a thinner coat than you would normally have. So that way you can build up more coats because the amount of weight that's there isn't such a problem. So the other thing that gives you a good gloss finish is the depth. And again, the extra coats will give you that does help. And of course, you've got lots of different products in our range that will give you a gloss finish. The acrylic gloss lacquer, the aerosol is brilliant for it. And if you use the burnishing cream on the final coat, that will really smooth the surface down and give you a really bright finish. It will really enhance it. Gary Rance came up with a system he uses. I believe he still uses it, where he applies the cellulose sanding sealer, burnishes that with a white Nye-Web or something like that to bring up a shine from the sanding sealer, a coat or 2 of the melamine lacquer, finishing the last coat with the burnishing cream. Then he puts the friction polish on there. Now, there's a lot of processes, but the depth that gives is fantastic. You get a great depth from it. You then polish it up with the burnishing cream at the end of it, allow the friction polish to harden off properly, and you get a really bright finish, a lot of depth, and you get the protection of the melamine lacquer underneath it, so that although the friction polish itself will start to go dull if it gets handled a lot, the melamine lacquer beneath will definitely keep it protected and looking good. So yeah, that's my favorite way of getting a gloss finish. Anything to add on that? No.
Well, the buffing system works well as well.
Oh yeah, the buffing system as well. I know someone's saying there about the about the buffing tree. Which I will just very quickly mention in a moment. But yeah, the buffing system is also brilliant. If you've got a good finish on the timber already, or even a pretty reasonable finish on the timber, taking it to the buffing system will bring up a really bright finish very quickly. Finishing off with the carnauba or the microcrystalline wax will give that really bright finish and a lot of depth. We have had an issue recently with the buffing tree where someone's been using it with a small mandrel, and what's happened is that the small mandrel has a step in it, and somehow they've managed to shear the mandrel, so it's come apart of the shoulder part of it. So whilst we think it's extremely unlikely that it will happen again to anyone else, what we are suggesting is that if you're using the buffing tree, you should only use that with the large mandrel. That's the kiddie. Thank you, Emma. See, someone with props. I should be more prepared. But yeah, the large mandrel, I would defy anyone to break that one. So that's the kiddie. Hang on, let's. Where are you, Emma? There you are. There we go. Beautifully modelled there by Emma. The large mandrel, made in the UK. Chrome plate. Bright zinc plated as well. Thank you, Emma. So that's the kiddie. Someone's asking if the buffing system is back in stock. Funnily enough, it will be on Monday. The thing we've been waiting for on pretty much everything is, funny enough, a large mandrel, which I'm collecting on Monday. So, oh, sorry, I've left you on screen there, haven't I? So I'll be picking them up on Monday. So we should be getting the buffing kits back in stock. Hurrah, hooray. So there we go. So we've got another question coming up. I've got to ask this one. Not one I've got to ask. No, I haven't. We've done that one. Jackie has got some questions for us. Jackie Bentley. So I'm going to bring Jackie on screen. Jackie, thanks very much for taking part, and let's bring you up here, put you on screen. I know you're a relatively new turner, and you've got some questions about sharpening for us.
Yes, thank you, Terry. A couple of questions. We've got a bench grinder, which we're obviously going to use to sharpen our tools with. Do I need different grades of grit to sharpen different tools? And the other question is, we were given a, what was it? A fingernail-shaped gouge from somebody, a wood turner who's not turning now. And we don't actually know how to sharpen the sides that come back in. And I just wondered if anybody could give us any guidance, please.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you, Jackie. I'll take you off screen for a minute. I wonder what's going to happen when I do this. Hang on, let's click that. No, wrong one. There we go. That's what I meant to do. See, it won't let me go from one to the other without the transition. That's my story anyway. So grits on a sharpening wheel and the fingernail gouge. Who wants to dive in there? I think Richard, I saw you grabbing a few props there.
I did indeed, yes. No, as far as wheels go, you can see that's my grinder just there. I only ever use this wheel, which is is actually a CBN 180 grit. The one, which way is it? That way. This one is too close to the wall, so I don't use it. But it's a white 120 wheel, and I used the white 120 wheel for years, and that is great. It's perfectly good to use. Excuse me. It was 8-inch, and it got down to about 5, and I decided to change it. Talk about UP from Yorkshire being tight. So I did splash out on the 180 CBN, and that works just as well, if not slightly better. But you don't have to go to that expense. A 120 white wheel is absolutely fine. Having other wheels to use are a nice to have rather than a must have. You hear about people on Tormex using 600 grit diamond wheels and things like that. I really wouldn't get too hung up on things like that. I would stick to basics to start with. The most important thing is the profile that you're actually grinding. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to just go onto this one, and I'm just going to grab a gouge. I'm going to assume you're looking at bowl gouges rather than spindle, because that's what most people are going to want to look at, I think. So this is what I use. This is a swept-back fingernail, although it's not as long grind as some people do. Some people grind their wings, right back here. And the way you get that, I will move my camera and show you on the grinder in a moment. But the most important thing to understand is the profile you're aiming to achieve more than anything else. There's all sorts of different jigs out there. You can do it freehand. I know I do it freehand. I think Emma said she does it freehand. I'm not sure what Dave uses. I don't know if you've got jigs or what, Dave, but a lot of professionals will do it freehand, although jigs are great certainly for teaching as well, because you can get a very repeatable angle. The thing to be aware of, however you grind your tools, is you want to know what you're aiming for. And the thing you're aiming for, when you look at the side of your tool, I'm going to do one of my world famous drawings now, and they're generally terrible. If you look at your gouge, does that make sense what you're looking at there? That's the bevel. Ooh. And what you're looking at is this top edge. So that's looking at the tool side on like that. I hope that makes sense. What you want is this edge to be convex. That is correct. What you don't want, and what can happen, is if you spend too long grinding the wings, and that is the main issue people have, is another one of my pictures. What you end up with is that. So now, again, this is our bevel, but this here, that's concave. Do you see that? That's wrong, because what you end up with is a hook on the tip there, and it means that the tool is virtually useless. And the reason you get that is because when you're grinding your tool, if you look, I don't know if we're going to be able to see down the end of the tool. If you look at the tool there, I don't know if that's going to focus. Let's have a go. There's a lot more steel here than there is here on the wing. Is that going to focus? There we go, that's focused. So all the steel's here, and people often, especially when they use jigs, they're inclined to grind more steel off of the wings. And it's a lot of it is because when you're using a jig, the jig allows the handle to come round in a very nice smooth action, and so people get a bit carried away, and it's like, oh, let's grind that wing there, yeah, oh, and then let's grind the other wing, and you spend too much time on the wings and not enough in the middle, and so you grind too much away, and then you end up with that, which is no good. The thing to be aware of is that this is what you're trying to achieve. Now, if you've got a longer grind, then obviously it's going to come back further and you'll have a different shape bevel, but that's not important. The important thing is that is convex or straight. It can be straight, but convex is ideal. It makes it the most versatile tool. If it's hollow, concave, it's no good. You've took too much steel off and you need to just sort of reset and go again, really. I hope that answers the question there.
Okay, thank you, Richard. Let's take you off the main screen there. And Jackie, let's put you back on. Did that clarify things for you?
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Convex, not concave.
Brilliant.
Thank you very much.
Okay, very welcome. And I know you had another question, but we are running low on time at the moment. So maybe next time, because
that's fine. Thank you. Thank you.
You're getting a good reaction so far. Thanks very much for joining in tonight. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye.
I'm waving, and well, hang on.
Swoosh.
There we go. There we are. So, final question of the evening. So, we did say we were going to go on for about an hour. We seem to be about an hour and a half, but this is the last one. And Frederick Day, who's really big fan of our live stream, so I hope you're still out there, Frederick. I know you were the first one in tonight, so hope you're still out there. And he's asked about what's the best finish to apply to wet, or at least not fully dried wood. And he's looking for a glossy finish if possible. So he usually rough turns his projects and then allows them to dry, but particularly in the current conditions, it never seems to get much below 15%. So he's not had a lot of luck with the things he's tried. Any suggestions that anyone has for him now? Who wants to go first?
That's not an easy one. It's not, especially with wet wood. Yeah, what he could do is take the piece into the house to finish drying it, because generally the wood in somebody's home is usually around about 12%, 10 to 12% moisture content. So if he took it in his home, it would just finish that drying off, because otherwise he's going to really struggle. The only way I could suggest that he could get a good finish on wet wood is by literally coat after coat after coat of a good finishing oil. Because other than that, you're going to really struggle to get a good finish on it unless it's dry.
And I think one of the important things as well is because the wood's wet, it's going to move. So it's very important to have a finish that's going to move with it. Otherwise, it will crack. If you stick a lacquer on there, it will very, very quickly crack. So oil is a great one. Wax is a great one for it, definitely. Emma's saying that's what spare rooms are for, to dry them out with. So makes sense. Any other thoughts on that one? It is a tough question, actually. It's surprisingly tough. Obviously, getting dry timber is the real answer. But any other thoughts on it, folks?
I think the main thing is, I think the main thing Dave was getting at there is you don't want to finish wet wood, you want to dry it. The key really, and I don't do a lot of wet wood. I hate turning wet wood because I'm a production turner, and I can't be doing with my tools getting rusty and my lathe bed turning black. You know, it's horrible. I really hate it. Give me a bit of nice air dried wood any day. But on a few occasions, people have brought me a section of tree, and I've had a tree cut down in my garden, and I like a bowl making out of it. Okay, I can do that. But what I will always do is I'll rough turn it. So I'll turn the bowl maybe with 1 inch wall thickness, and I'll wrap it in newspaper, and I'll just put it under a bench and just let it sit for 6 months. Just leave it. Occasionally change the paper, and occasionally test it with a moisture meter. If you've not got a moisture meter, you can weigh it, and when it stops losing weight, then it's at equilibrium, as they say. In this temperature, you're not going to get it below 15. I can tell you that now. Like Dave says, get it indoors to get it any lower. In the summer, you're okay. Your best bet really is to cut your trees down in autumn, rough turn them, let them cool over, let them sort of settle over the winter while it's cooler, and when it warms up, then you're going to get a bit better, because you don't want red hot days because that's going to make your wood crack. But yeah, just get it as dry as you can, and then finish turn it from that inch, because that inch thick bowl will dry a lot quicker than a log. You know, a log's never going to dry properly, you know, so an inch thick bowl will dry in 3 to 6 months. Then you can finish turn it, and it will be dry enough that you can, you know, you can get a finish on it. But I generally, for bowls, I would always use oil anyway as a finish. But yeah,
one thing you can do, if your wife allows, is put it in the microwave. Yeah, I do it. I've done it many a time. 30 seconds, full power, then take it out, let all the steam rise off, let it cool down, put it back in, another 30 seconds, and just keep doing that, and you can have it dry in a matter of hours. You really can.
I think I'd rather
don't leave it too long
in the microwave, but yeah.
I have a microwave in the workshop. Yeah.
I thought that was heating your pies up, Dave, but not to worry. So fantastic, yeah. Brilliant. So I think we've come to the end. So that's wonderful. Team, thank you very much. You've been brilliant. And there we are, Frederick. He is still there. Has just acknowledged that, and so he's going to empty the spare room now. There, Emma. He's taking you at your word there. So. It's been a great evening, lots of fun. Hope you've all enjoyed it. Thank you again for taking part. It's been really good. I couldn't have done it without you, because I know nothing about turning. It would have been a really dull evening. So thank you very much for joining us. Lots of good comments coming in. Lots of people saying they've enjoyed it. So yeah, I think we might be doing it again.
When's your next quiz?
The next quiz is let me make sure I give you the right date. It's a week tomorrow. It's the 30th of January. So yeah, we're gonna 36 questions over 6 rounds. Emma's looking forward, folks. At the last quiz, Emma was in the lead. She was she's the first for one question. Emma was in the lead. She got it straight in there. So absolutely brilliant. She's hoping to get into lead for at least 2 this time, I understand. But we shall see. But yeah, so the next quiz on our YouTube channel, 30th of January, 7:30. Just for fun. Well, actually, it's just for fun mostly. There is a £50 prize, but that goes to the charity of the winner's choice. So if you take part in it, you can win £50 for your favourite charity. So even better. So that's good fun. Free to enter, of course. So yeah, brilliant evening. Thank you very much, team. My wonderful panel, Dave, Emma, Richard. It would be great to have some applause for you. If I had some canned applause, I would play it, but I haven't. So yeah, I will applaud you.
Yeah, there you go.
Loving that where they are. Thank you very much, and thank you everyone out there who's been watching us tonight. It's been good fun. Thank you to all the people who sent in questions, everyone who has come on screen to ask the questions. I know some of you were a little reluctant to do that at first, so thank you very much. It's a brave step, and it's much appreciated. And yeah, remember, if you want us to do this again, and let us know. Pop a comment in the comments thing either now or later, and we'll do that, and we will read them later on, and or drop us an email and send us some questions, and we'll see you then. All right, so next quiz 30th of January, and then after that we've got Emma coming up. So team, thank you very much. I will be speaking to you soon, I'm sure, and in the meantime, good night. Thank you very much. Bye for now.
Bye
Bye.
then. Bye Richard. Bye Emma.
Cheers.
Bye, everybody.
Right, bye.
Bye.